The word minority was never designed to describe you. It was designed to manage you. Today, I will give you a better word that is backed by research, and that word is microculture. Stay with me. My name is Dr. Chibuzor Azubuike. I teach intercultural communication, and I'm a Nigerian woman living in the US, raising 2 kids. So I have lived in different worlds. What is microculture? What is minority? And what is macroculture? Stay with me. Minority is a numerical and political label designed to rank and manage people, while microculture, which is the appropriate term, is an identifiable group of people with shared history, language, and a fully developed communication system that differs from the dominant macroculture. We avoid minority and subculture because these words are derogatory. So the key word is different, not deficient. Now, what are those characteristics of microculture? Again, not minority. The characteristics, we have about 5 of them. One of them is physical and cultural traits. You can tell from how they look. You didn't choose your skin color, you didn't choose your sex, you didn't choose your religion, you were born into it. The second is involuntary membership. You didn't choose what religion, you were born into it, right? So you didn't get to choose that. The third one is endogamy, marrying within your own group. So dominant culture often discourage exogamy. Exogamy is marrying outside of your group to preserve family property and cultural tradition. And then the fourth one is awareness of subordination. So microcultural groups are often aware of their status. They know that they have been looked down upon and seen as inferior. They are aware of that. And finally, unequal treatment. They are aware that there's discrimination with regards to housing. There is often institutional discrimination. Now, in 1995, Edward Adner introduced muted group theory. The theory says that some groups are systematically silenced, not because they do not have nothing to say, but because the dominant culture is the macro culture. The dominant culture's language was not built to hold their experience. So it's a kind of silencing that leaves them out. So microcultural groups must be bicultural to survive. They're straddling 2 locations, 2 worlds. They learn the dominant culture code, but they build theirs, right? And there is this subtle thing. The dominant culture is not required to learn theirs. So if we have to put this in perspective, for example, in the US, the macroculture would be white, while the microculture would be anybody else, like Black Americans, those who do not convey as much power, as white people. Now, let's now look at some of the values that you see in other microculture. This is how they survive. For example, with the Hispanic is the concept of familia. Family, they hold family, in high esteem, formal ties with family, the way they communicate. Now, the thing is with microculture and macroculture, because they have their own communication code that they communicate with themselves, they are often, the dominant culture does not understand that. And the thing, because they don't understand the microculture's language, that's where stereotype comes in. A typical example would be like Arab Americans, for example. Arab Americans who use the word a lot, Inshallah, or even, that word is common amongst, people from, that part of the world, Inshallah. So someone who is an outsider who is hearing that, and they would say Inshallah when maybe you ask a question or you invite them for an event or something, and they say Inshallah. Inshallah does not mean that, it's not always God. Yeah, it means God willing when you look at it, but it is actually a linguistic mechanism to help manage relationship, because in the Arab culture, relationship is very important and you don't want to cut ties by saying no. So Inshallah, it means God willing. It means it's a way to defer uncertainty if you're not sure you would go, as well as to retain that relationship. Now, to an outsider, that would be seen as being corny or being evasive. But no, it's ingrained in the culture of the people. Remember, this is not about saying this is good or this is bad. It's about building your intercultural competence so that you can understand how to navigate different worlds when you find yourself in different places. All right. A typical example is Native Americans, for example. When you talk about Native Americans here, what goes to people's mind is mascots. But what that is doing is depriving the younger generation of a modern identity. They have been stereotyped as ancient people. That is one of the things that you find a lot, that the macroculture does to the microculture. Now, I've been in the US, for example, and I've experienced this microculture, macroculture in different ways. This macroculture, yes, it's culturally specific, but it also shows up in different ways. For example, as a student doing my PhD, I remember I went for one event, other students were asked to come, and I went there, and I was told not to come again because I had children. Now, the experience or the idea or the reason behind that is students are people who don't have children, right? They are just, young people. And so I was asked not to come, and I felt alienated from my own group. And that made me realize that, yeah, even though I'm a student, I am non-traditional. Does that make sense? So basically, this shows up in different ways. Basically, just think of it as a stereotype as how a particular thing should be. So anything that does not look like that is being frowned on, is being discouraged. That can be a microculture. Okay? Now, if your organization genuinely wants inclusion, you cannot just invite people to the table and then expect them to communicate like the dominant culture. You have to redesign the table in a way that they can feel welcome to share the language, the norms, the definition of proposal. This is the real DEI work here. It's not just about, representation. It's about real inclusion. Now, every microculture we discussed today, we talked about the Hispanic, Black American, and even the Arab, they have their own fully developed communication system. None of them are broken. None of them are deficient. They are just different. And difference is well understood because we live in a multicultural world. So everything I teach for a reason. If you're looking at getting global opportunities, you run a business, whatever it is that you do, leadership and communication are central. And if you understand how to make the best out of it, the list is endless. So if you're an organization, feel free to reach out to me. I offer trainings, leadership trainings, intercultural trainings for organizations. And if you're an individual, I offer trainings on how to apply for global opportunities and build your leadership qualities. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll be here to share something else. I have something very exciting in the next episode of this series. Thank you for watching.